Meanwhile, the Ukrainian government has launched an emergency hotline for Africans and Asians fleeing Russia's invasion. It follows widespread allegations of racism faced by Africans attempting to leave the country. Numerous African students in Ukraine have shared stories of being blocked by Ukrainian security agents from leaving that country.
Well, in a tweet, Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said the authorities were working intensively to ensure the safety and passage of African and Asian students.
And for more on the evacuation efforts, let's cross live now to Poland, where Rice correspondent Adefemi Akinsanya is waiting to speak to us from Warsaw. And also joining us from Lagos is the CEO of Peace Allen Onyema. Thank you for joining us, Adefemi, in Warsaw, and Mr. Onyema from our Lagos. Not sure if it's from the studio, but let me begin with you, Adefemi, who's been on ground. Not as smooth as envisaged for a first evacuation flight for Nigerians, and 4 to 5 hours delay. Femi, 4 to 5 hours behind schedule. How did that happen? The ambassador is of the opinion that this was because of those who were reluctant to come back home. But was that what you saw on ground?
Oh, it's a difficult one, Adefemi. I think the clearest thing that we know is that not enough effort was made in terms of making sure these evacuees were ready to go on time. And this is something that they had 4 days to prepare for. So it was quite disappointing to see that everyone was running so late, and to the detriment of themselves, since that flight was cancelled at the very last minute for them. They'd already crossed into security. But if we're looking at the reasons, so, as we heard in the report, Ambassador Ugu said that, this is youthful exuberance. He said he struggled, had to go, door to door in hotel rooms to get these evacuees out of their rooms and into the coaches and make their way to the airport there. It's a difficult one because when we landed just after 9 a.m., there were 2 young girls, twin girls, who were already waiting at the airport and no one else. And so when we made that journey from the airport to the hotel where the evacuees were, many of them had already, packed themselves onto the coach, but it just, there didn't seem to be a huge amount of urgency. And I have to also be honest in the sense that it didn't feel as though anybody, whether it was the evacuees themselves or the people looking after them, it didn't appear as though they were well aware that they were running so far behind schedule. So it did turn out to be quite a surprise that once everyone had crossed security, then we started hearing lines that they're not traveling, it's not going to happen. So the ambassador said that people were reluctant to go, and that made it very difficult. Also, when you speak to the Nigerians themselves, many of them say the information didn't really penetrate all the way down to the grassroots level. So not enough people knew about evacuations in Poland. Not many of them knew where the pickup point was, how to get there, how to make themselves known. So even after coaches were leaving, initially when I stayed behind at the hotels, I could see that many people were showing up in private cars or in Ubers. And then I jumped in a vehicle and made my way back to the airport just to see what the situation was was like, and that's when I saw all of the huge queues. So just across the board, it didn't seem as though there was a clear idea that time is of the essence, and it could have been because of the humanitarian aspect of this journey. Perhaps if you knew ahead of time, this is your flight time, this is when check-in opens, this is when boarding closes, there might have been more of an air of urgency. But I think because the air was very much, this is a humanitarian effort, it might have been a situation where many people thought that the rules might have been relaxed for them, and that obviously wasn't the case.
Yes, okay, let's bring in CEO of Air Peace, one of the airlines to airlift the Nigerians there. Thank you so much for joining us from Lagos. Now, one can only imagine that this delay would, have financial implications or financial cost for your airline. And I would like to know exactly how many Nigerian nationals are you going to be airlifting? Is it just restricted to the registered Nigerians, the students, or every Nigerian who is willing to come back home, from Ukraine? And within what time frame are we looking at?
Well, thank you very much. You see, the job of the airline is just to get in there and take these people out. The number and how they're going to get to the airport is dependent on the Nigerian mission out there. Our flight landed at 9:02 a.m. this morning, and we were to depart Warsaw at 10 a.m. in the morning. But at 10 a.m., just as you heard from Adefemi, only 2 passengers were at the airport. 5 hours later, not more than 40 people were there. And we are being told that a lot of them will be coming much later. The duty time of the pilots would expire because these pilots will fly 9 hours to Nigeria. And if you add it to the delay, they will be flouting the regulations if they did. And Air Peace, we don't joke with safety and fatigue. And again, be mindful that we stationed these pilots there 2 days ago. It wasn't the pilots that flew that aircraft into Poland that will be bringing the aircraft back to Nigeria. No, we flew, we used a commercial airline to fly our pilots out there, complete set of crew out there, waiting for this arrival. So they reported to work about 8:30 a.m. today. Immediately the aircraft landed, they went into the aircraft to take over. However, they waited till 2 a.m. and people were not coming. Nobody is to be blamed. Evacuation is not an easy thing. We've done it before, but the one we did in South Africa was very, very seamless. What is happening here, like the ambassador was saying, maybe the reluctance of people, but I think most importantly, as information I got from out there, a lot of them, because of the movement from Ukraine and having to trek long distance, lost their documents. The embassy was trying hard to, make their documentation come right. And some of them were even fatigued after all those trips to the hotel. And they couldn't make it to the airport on time. And the airline cannot continue to wait. Already it's costing the airline a lot because that aircraft was supposed to have come back to Nigeria since today and go into other operations for the airline. But now it's waiting out there. We've given them 6 a.m. departure for tomorrow in the morning. So I will pray and wish that this time around they will be out there on time for us to take them.
Also praying and wishing along with you. Let me go back to Adefemi Akinsanya. Femi, you highlighted communication seems to have been one of the problems here. The message translating to the people everywhere that there is going to be an evacuation flight today, and I'm puzzled because the Nigerian government had been talking about this evacuation flight for days now. But from what you've seen on ground, from the conversations you've had, do you think that that communication gap has been closed? Has it improved? Are we likely to see a better and a smoother evacuation exercise tomorrow?
I'm hoping, for the sake of these evacuees who deserve to be returned home with dignity and in time, I'm hoping that it will be a smoother situation tomorrow. And it does feel as though that will be the case, that the scheduled flight for tomorrow is a lot earlier in the morning. And all of the evacuees were given hotel rooms to stay in. And they've been told that they have to be up around 4 a.m. and make their journey to the airport and be ready so that there isn't a repeat of what happened earlier on today. So I'm hoping that definitely will be the situation. It does seem as though everybody realizes there's a consequence for poor punctuality. But when we spoke to the ambassador, you heard what he said. He was very openly critical about a lot of the attitudes that he felt some of the evacuees had. And he spoke a lot about the reluctance and that it took a lot of effort to get people on these evacuation flights out of the country. And I do want to shed a bit of light on that, because it's more than just people wanting to be difficult. When you speak to these people, like I've spoken to them, a lot of them say if they are hesitant to come back to Nigeria, it's because they don't know what they're coming back to. They have very little in terms of choices of what they would be coming back to. And also, most importantly, a lot of these people don't want to leave Eastern Europe without all of their loved ones also being able to leave. You also have to realize that it's not just one group of people. There are families who are spread across different parts of Eastern Europe and Ukraine. So it takes a dedicated process to get them over the line. So that could be a reason why people are hesitant. It might not just be wanting to be difficult and not wanting to show up on time. This is a very difficult and traumatic experience for a lot of these people. Let's not forget that because we, before I left Nigeria to get here, because we're in Nigeria and because we're privy to the news, because we're all journalists, we may even take information for granted, and not everybody has the same access to information as we do. And sometimes this example will teach everybody that there has to be a dedicated effort to making sure that information reaches the people it is meant for. You don't just leave it on one level and think, okay, well, they've talked about it on the news or it's been printed in the newspaper. There has to be a systematic process to make sure the people who need this information get it in a timely manner. Because a lot of people were traveling and coming up through hearsay, not because it was clear to them, this is the time you need to be here, this is where you need to be, this is how you're going to get to the airport, and this is the time you're going to get there. If you don't get there on time, you won't be able to fly. That information wasn't there today, but we're hoping that will be the case tomorrow. And we're hoping that soon we'll be able to see wonderful pictures of Nigerians returning to the motherland and being welcomed, which is what they deserve.
Absolutely. Very quickly to Allen Onyema. Well, I mean, in the event you have a repeat situation, what kind of discussions are you having with the Nigerian authorities? And are you drawing down on the, part of the $8.5 million earmarked for this evacuation?
Well, for APIS, it's not about money this time. I don't really give a damn about the publication of 8.5 million. Our minds and hearts are not set on that. Our minds and hearts are set on fellow citizens who are out there suffering. It pained us today that they couldn't come back. And just like Adefemi has just said, truly, I think there was a gap in information and communication to these evacuees. And I hope certain actors must have learned their lessons. And so that they come back to motherland, safe and sound and happily too. So it's not about money. The president, in his magnanimity, has approved that this time around it has to be paid for. And to be honest with you, the presidential villa has been calling me almost every other hour. The president pushing them, showing that the president is really interested in having our citizens return home safely. They've been piling a lot of pressures on me. I've not slept for days now. So it's not about the money. The most important thing is to bring these people back, and I'm sure the central bank was involved. They are making payments to the airlines, but I said so because I know they will do just that. Money is not the problem now. The government will come through with everything. Money is not the problem now, but the most important thing is to make sure that our people return home safely and stand up. And again, show some pride in their country. Mr. President has really been on everybody's neck. That I can attest, because I know the pressure being mounted on us to make sure everything goes right from the top. In fact, this evening, the TCO approval for APIS has been gotten from Europe. It's the presidency that made it happen for APIS to get that TCO approval so that we could deploy our jumbo jet, the 777, to Europe. That will show you the intention of government and the seriousness the government has placed on this. But I think those actors out there at the embassies representing us should, at the same time, also feel the pulse of Mr. President and the Minister of Foreign Affairs and others who are out here, not sleeping. Adefemi will tell you that I was at the airport with them before they took off at about 2:20 a.m. last night. As I was going home, I was still receiving calls from the villa, monitoring everything. I think we are going to come out good. And this night, APIS will be deploying another aircraft to Budapest. So tomorrow, they'll be leaving this night. They'll be leaving tonight at about 11 p.m. this night. APIS will be deploying another jet to Budapest, Hungary, to bring our people back home. We want to join hands with other actors to make sure they're proud of their nation. That's what matters to us now.
Thank you so much, Allen Onyema, CEO Peace Airlines, and our international correspondent, Adefemi Akinsanya there.